unacceptable. That was the word that the German defense minister used here on stage in Munich last year, reacting to the comments made by the deputy president, Vice President J.D. Vance, when he accused Europe of violating freedom of speech. So I have the chance now to ask the German defense minister, Boris Pistorius, what is your message going to be to the Americans this year?
Welcome to Germany. Welcome to Europe, and welcome as a reliable ally and partner in NATO.
You do get the feeling, though, that the tone has changed somewhat. It's almost as though it took the Europeans a year to come up with the speeches that we would have liked to have heard last year.
Well, at least we can't blame us for that. I think Germany was quite clear all over the time since 2023. So we have been clear, we have made our homework, and we increased our defense budgets enormously. I mean, we are now arrived at 108 billion euros for 26. So we did everything we could do, and I think the United States realized that and acknowledged that. And at the same time, the tone changed on both sides, and what we have really to realize and to acknowledge is that the world we used to live in the last 35 years has changed. Definitely. And it won't be the same than before. So if the world changes, we know we need to change too. But the best way to do it as allies and partners is to do it jointly, in a mutual sense of what it is about. And I'm working for that together with others to achieve that, and I think it is quite successful, seeing that our American friends wrote down in their defense strategy that they are committed and stay committed with NATO, that they stay committed with nuclear deterrence, and they stay committed with their expectation, which I shared already 2 years ago, that the Europeans and NATO need to do more for their own conventional deterrence and defense in order to allow Americans to do more in the Indo-Pacific. So if we we continue on that path, everything will be fine.
How much did the Greenland shock, if we want to call it that, contribute to that fact that the Europeans really rose up and are trying to speak with one voice now?
I think that was very important, especially the last aspect you mentioned, to speak with one voice and to react rapidly, not with a delay of 2 or 3 weeks. So we reacted, we were clear, we were determined, and this was very, very, very interesting to see, I think, for all the world beyond Europe. And at the same time, it was necessary to act like that, and the success proves that it was right.
But the Europeans are still not speaking with one voice. You know that as well as I do. There are lots of issues where you are struggling when it comes to defense projects together with France and Spain, for example. Is there a future for that joint fighter jet plane project?
We'll see about that in the 2 or 3 weeks to come. The ball is now in the court of the head of states. We will see what's going to happen. Everybody knows, who is deeper in that subject, that it is not a problem, not an issue of the governments or the parliaments or even the armed forces. It is an issue of the industries. So we can't command to do that. So we have to see how it works out finally in the weeks to come. But anyway, even if it failed, it had nothing to do with the German-French relationship and the German-French willing to cooperate in other projects. But beyond that, it is necessary to do more in cooperation in Europe in terms of industrial defense industry. This will be a challenge for the years to come, definitely.
And you've also tried to come up with new ways of talking to allies. You've created spontaneous new formats, inviting the UK again into that group of Europeans. How worried are you about the instability at home of key allies in Europe, like France, but also the UK?
Well, we all have to face the realities we live in our countries. In almost every country in Europe, you have far right, far left, or both. But you see, for example, in the Netherlands, after a period of instability and not knowing what's going to happen, we see a stable government in Netherlands, and this is very good. So everything can happen, and it is about our way to to make politics and to explain our politics. I think we can be successful in every country, but it needs to be clear in our communication. And of course, we have to wait and see what's going to happen in UK and in France, but it makes no sense to reflect and to discuss about that before it's happened.
Yeah, Chancellor Merz gave his speech, his opening remarks here in Munich, and what was interesting was that one of the key messages was, we don't just need you, you also need us. How much have the Americans understood that their posture in Europe is also in their own interest?
Well, I'm not so surprised as you seem to be. I have been knowing that always. I mean, this is a partnership, this is an alliance. And of course, the benefit of an alliance is always to find on both sides. So let's be clear. The Americans do have their own agenda as the most powerful nation in the world and leader in the Western Hemisphere. But Europe is not just one country. We have 500 million inhabitants. We're one of the most powerful economic areas. We are very, very important for the US military in different terms. You know that as well as I do. So it is a giving and taking on both sides. So therefore, I'm quite relaxed for the moment.
But I'm just astonished when I listen to, for example, the US ambassador to NATO, Mr. Whitaker, speak about the Europeans as the children, where the parents are beginning to lose patience and the parents now have to tell the young children, we want you to get a job. Don't you think that is an image where the Europeans should say, okay, look, this is a partnership, we are not your children?
When did he say that?
He said that at the kickoff event for the Munich Security Conference.
Okay, I met him yesterday. He didn't say anything like that when we took part together in UDCG and NATO Council session. Nothing. The opposite is quite clear. They say and they acknowledge really and they value what we are doing, especially Germany is doing, but also other countries in NATO and Europe. And they do see it, and they see the progresses we have made in the last years. And therefore, I didn't listen to that. And if he said like that, I would rather consider it as rhetoric.
Okay, so what is your core message in your meetings here? Of course, we all know that Munich is about those closed-door meetings. What do you want the Americans to take away from here?
In the first place, we are doing our stuff. We are doing what NATO alliance obligations request us and demand us to do. We stepped up enormously, not only in Germany, but also in other countries in Europe and in NATO. We know exactly and have been knowing that it is up to us to take more responsibility with regard to European conventional deterrence and defense. And at the same time, we must not give up the trust and the reliability in the alliance when it comes to nuclear deterrence, because Russia is the global threat. The US acknowledged too in their defense strategy. They wrote it down. It is not any longer, as some people said before, just a regional threat. It's a global threat. And given that, it's quite clear it's up to us jointly to prepare for that.
The German government keeps saying that there is not enough pressure yet on Russia still to get them to the negotiating table, to bring this war to an end under conditions that are acceptable for the Ukrainians and the Europeans. Which leverage is there at Munich as well? Where can you talk about this issue?
Well, this is less a subject for discussions here at the MSC. I think we should really have a critical look in the sanctions which are already established, and we need to see whether it is sufficient or not, and whether we do survive it efficiently. I mean, we need really to cut the revenues out of selling gas and oil to stop that war by taking away the money. I mean, that is the objective, and at the same time, we have to make clear as European and Americans together that it is about doing everything to end the war by supporting Ukraine. Russia is not interested in a peace or a ceasefire. They want to proceed. They want to make terror attacks on the civilian the civil infrastructure and energy infrastructure in Ukraine. It is not about military process in the territory. It's about terrorism against the population. So they want to break the moral of Ukraine, and we need to stand with Ukraine in this period of the war even more than ever before.
And of course, the Ukrainians, again today when you arrived, the first question is, when is Germany going to deliver the Taurus? I don't want to ask you this question because I know your answer. So I want to ask you the question, do the Ukrainians need the Taurus still?
I think they are a way ahead. They did developments, they achieved developments in the last especially 12, 18 months, which are really impressive when it comes to drones, missiles, long-distance drones. They are really very successful, and we see the effect in Russia in certain cities and plants. So I think they don't need it really, but maybe they will have another look on it, but it doesn't change anything.
Well, they probably wouldn't object if you gave it to them. But yeah, let's stick with the issue of drones for a moment. The Bundeswehr, the German army, also desperately needs drones, and you've just signed, or you are in the process of signing contracts with 2 companies. There is criticism from the German opposition when it comes to one of those 2 companies that are supposed to provide the drones, because there is one key investor. He is called Peter Thiel, who is very controversial, a US investor with a very nationalist, white agenda, political agenda. That is the accusation. What do you say to these accusations?
Well, I don't know whether my informations are correct or not, but as far as I'm informed, we are not talking about a key stakeholder. We are about somebody who has between 3 and 4.5%. So this is not a key role as a stakeholder, and therefore we should consider it seriously, but it's not an obstacle really to make contracts with that company.
Okay, so you say you have to look at the numbers and the share of investment. Okay.
And the influence, which is really there or not.
Yeah, no, I realize that you have lots of people to meet, but I would just like to ask you about Russia again and how to get more pressure on Russia, because, of course, China is using some of its overcapacity to hand over its goods to Russia so that Russia continues its war effort. Should Germany think about, potentially even sanctions on dual-use goods that are being shipped from Germany to China?
I think we are really obliged even to consider regularly whether our measures are still sufficient or not. But at the same time, we have to be clear, Russia is not really successful in the war on the ground. They are losing 35,000 men every month, increasing numbers. So at the same time, with a gain of territory only of a few kilometers. So what are we talking about? Russia is not unbesiegbar?
Invincible.
Yeah. Russia is not invincible. So, and therefore it is so important to keep on supporting Ukraine.
Mr. Pistorius, thank you so much.